and gallery view, thanks to the Zoom support. All right, welcome everyone to the bi-weekly IPLD meeting. It's November 26th, 2018. And let's see what we have on the agenda. So yeah, please put your name on the attendees list if you haven't yet. And we need a note taker. Any volunteers? So it's the great opportunity to learn about how to take meeting minutes. It's just a small meeting, so it's a good way to learn it. So I'm really in favor of like recycle through everyone. So yeah, it's not the burden on a single person. Anyone? All right. Thanks, Edin and Steve. So who, yeah, just put your name on the crypt pad and you will figure it out. Thank you. All right. So what do we have on the agenda? Yeah, so first of all, I'd like to mention that we now have a repository for the team management stuff. That's one of the steps to get basically independent of the IPFS organization kind of and being our own project. There's still some things linking to IPFS, but over the time we'll get more and more independent. But I think there's no rush really. And it contains all the details about this meeting. Then I'd like to talk about the JS API specs update. So I just, again, linked in the agenda, just two issues where I propose a new API, but it's more interesting for the JS people. So perhaps it's interesting for the Go people as well, basically to see how we do things, but it's really meant for a review from the JS people. All right. Then that's the agenda items I have. Then we should quickly go through any updates anyone has. So I did already my update. So yeah, so should we discuss anything? So now it's basically raise your hand and say something if you have something to say.
Hey, this isn't so much of an update from last week, but just coming into this week, I'm going to start landing a bunch of Unix FSv2 spec stuff. There's a bunch of different PRs for different parts of it. And just the sort of skeleton will be landed now. And I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start any open discussions that we still have going will turn into their own issues or their own PRs, and we'll actually reference them in the README for the spec. So the spec will, be this sort of working draft rather than, whatever we've completely agreed to on at a particular time. Just so we can start to move forward and maybe even start to implement some of this stuff, because just the sort of basics that we have there now should work enough to start implementing.
All right. Any comments or questions for Michael? No. So anything else? So should we do a quick round on the stuff that you plan to work on the next 2 weeks, roughly? So I started, so I will work on, so as I did the API drafts, I plan to play with them a bit and implement them on the current stuffs just to see if they are really like sound or if they actually work on not only look good on paper. And it's also connected to kind of GraphSync because it kind of is the higher level APIs that then also GraphSync will use. All right, Michael already told us. So what else? Let's go on with Steven, for example. What will you be working on next 2 weeks?
This is almost for lifted fee, but trying to use CIDs as pure IDs. I'm trying to find a link to the issue. If you have anything or any comments for that.
Well, what did we end up, or what did you guys end up deciding on for that? Is it they're going to be sort of an IPLD dependency internally?
There hasn't been a decision. I was hoping to get one at the meeting, but going back to the issue, it looks like there's still a lot of discussion happening. Yeah, so the issue is now in the notes. Basically, the idea is we want to use CIDs as PRIDs because keys are content, and this allows us to like type or basically have type pointers to PRIDs instead of like just assuming that they're protobuf or that they're specific protobuf. But yeah, so if people, like, there are a lot of comments from the from the libtp side, not much from the IPLD side because it's obviously on the libtp spec repo. The like one thought that may help push this forward is like this what happened in the IPLD repo. The idea is we could move CIDs from the IPLD org to the multi-formats org and basically say, well, like CIDs are a multi-format that are now like a strong dependency of IPLD. In practice, this makes absolutely no difference. It's still like a core component of IPLD. This just might make messaging simpler. I don't know.
Is there a future meeting, or like, is this going to be an async thing, or I don't know? Is there any next steps for that we should be aware of?
Please, like, if you have anything to say on that issue I just posted, chime in. Otherwise, there's already been a sync meeting, and I thought we had a conclusion there, and turns out we didn't. So there will be more discussion, and hopefully we can get people on the same page.
All right, thanks for the update. Eric, do you have any updates or like what you will work on?
Sure. My quick update is I'm working on Go IPLD Prime still. I recently gave it some mutable arrays, and so now I'm starting to write some tests that go like make an IPLD graph out of the mutable interface and then go test that it can get stuff back out of it. It's still very primitive, but I hope I'm going in the right direction with this. And I guess I have kind of a question coming out of how I'm iterating on this, which is if we have any things in mind which will consume this in the near future. We have, I actually don't know how many pieces of code we have in the Go world that are using the IPLD interfaces. I know some of it's getting used in Filecoin. Yeah, I don't know. I kind of want to like have something to drag me in the right direction. I'm not exactly sure what it is at the moment.
Filecoin is using them all over the place. IPFS is kind of using them, but not really in a very idiomatic way because it's still like in this half protobuf world land.
Yeah.
Unix FS2, like you should definitely use that as a motivation for like how should we structure things. But again, also Filecoin.
Yeah, so maybe I should start a Unix FS v2 Go code base. I don't think there is one yet, and then try to use that as a dragging force. I know Filecoin is a lot, but like I kind of also don't want to like. I would like to develop this on a smaller, more sidelined project for a while first before going back over there. That's it for me.
All right. Aiden, do you want to add something or like yeah, so.
Not.
Or any questions?
Yeah. I'm hanging around mostly because of some of the sort of the graph synchronization stuff that I've done or that I'm working on for, version graphs. There's an ongoing discussion now about having these, version DAGs that I think got started by people involved with DDC and also with the IGIS project. I'm just trying to see how these things all fit together. I think the the comments about us not using IPLD interfaces on the Go side in quite either enough or in the right idiomatic way definitely speaks to me, because I was trying to figure out how I was going to write my own like graph structure stuff internally, and I wasn't really sure where to go, or what was like implement now versus implement interfaces later. So I think I know some guidance on that or direction. I don't know whether in the form of a README in the IPLD repo or something could be helpful, or just talking about it and making it clear, because we use graphs for all sorts, or linked data for all sorts of things, but which things are IPLD and which things are not IPLD within the linked data world, I think is still up for discussion.
Well, anything linked by CID is essentially IPLD. Is sort of like the general sort of overview. And I mean, are you looking for like guidance of how to build graphs generally, or specific like in your language, like which kind of tools to use, or how to?
Like right now, I have a Go thing. The idea is just I'm gonna have a bunch of. I went with the easiest possible thing, which is the graphs are represented internally, but on the wire, I just sort of send updates and say, here's the previous node. You know, here's my parent, here's my child, right? And then those get sent over the wire and interpreted. I figure there must be something going on, but I decided to just make a protobuf that did that, which feels like the wrong direction. And it may be that I'm not looking in the right places. Sorry, you're on mute, Michael.
Yeah, I mean, the big thing would be to use CBOR instead of protobuf there. I mean, that would make things a little bit cleaner and more in the new direction. That's kind of the primary thing. But I think in terms of how you're structuring the data, it's probably relatively similar. The only thing that I would ask is like, how are you deciding what to send over the wire other than just the new root node? Because like, do you actually know the state that the other client has? And so you're just sending it the changes, or are you just sending it the new root node and then it asks for the changes?
Yeah, so I'm not, the graphs aren't static, right? The idea is I'm just sending you, I wish to add a node to this, I wish to add a node under this parent. And then there's the protocol that right now is the dumb protocol is you just send all the nodes, right? But eventually a more sophisticated protocol of saying, well, which nodes do I actually need to send you? Because we have two different versions of this graph. How do we make sure we end up with the same one? Assuming that the answer to merge is always create a new branch, right?
Yeah, so we have a new replication repository that's at IPLD/replication. If you could just write up sort of like this use case of like what you're trying to send around and what the merges look like, then we can discuss the right replication strategy and document that for sure. Yeah, and also use CBOR.
Can do.
David's hand is up.
Yeah, I have like 3 questions or points. Is it no, like I'm not sure, is it right now the right time to like just like open-ended points for us to discuss, or is still updates happening? Okay, I'll just go ahead. So I have like 3 points. First one, like I'm a little bit surprised or intrigued. I don't really understand like why Unix IPFS v2 is kind of like dragging. Like I remember there was like a huge discussion on the spec. Then Michael like over a weekend implemented a prototype of it, and I don't understand right now like why like the conversation, like there's like 3 people assigned to Unix IPFS v2 like drafting the spec in multiple OKR sheets, and I think the conversation is not happening, and because that is not happening, like it is just getting stuck. Then the other 2 things, and I'll just like highlight the 3, is Jess when using IPLD with Go IPFS right now is still problematic. Like we cannot, like essentially we cannot, right? Because the way that Go serializes things into HTTP is like makes everything JSON, and so it kind of like messes up with the like buffers and so on. And so there were multiple discussions, multiple proposals like how to fix this, and like we kind of like need to follow up on that. I don't know if anyone is like kind of like paying attention or just like following that discussion. And the last but on the list is IPLD like 2 years ago. And a huge community, like when the ideas of IPLD were like bubbling up, there are like multiple people coming up with different proposals and like different projects and like kind of like evaluating. And I would love for like this new group to kind of like take a moment to kind of like just like go through those old issues and like checking on like all of those people's ideas, because we might be like touching some of those people's ideas again, or like touching some of the projects that got highlighted again. And so it'd be very helpful to also like onboard all of those very excited contributors to the conversation, because they might not be aware that this is happening. So Michael, go ahead. Maybe I should have separated the 3 points.
No, it's okay. So first of all, on your last point with the people that were around before, I saw that you posted an issue about the notes that were IPLD related. Is that kind of the best place to start to sort of look through those people? And
Yeah, definitely. They will lead you to all the usernames and all the conversations. Okay. Like a lot of the activity happened there, and also on the IPFS specs repo. I can also like fetch those and like just highlight from that issue so that you have direct pointers.
Okay, perfect. And then the last point, so you were asking sort of like, what is the holdup on Unix OSV2, or why are so many people assigned to it? I'm not entirely sure that I understand all the context there, but basically like the spec was stalled out for a while, and there were a lot of unanswered questions, and then we sort of rebooted it a little bit. And there are still some unanswered threads, like some threads we don't have resolution on about really particular points. But I think that we're ready to land something that we can start implementing and then eventually worry about some of those other issues like later on. For instance, there's like a thread about, right now it says like when you're encoding the chunk data, it's always a link to the binary blob. You can't do it inline. And there's like an ask for smaller files, can we just inline it? And if we don't care about deduplication, can we just inline it? And so there's like a thread about that might change the spec. So we'll just note that thread and move on. And if we allow that in the future, then like we'll note it, and everybody can sort of update their implementations if possible.
Awesome. Okay. So just like to provide the context that I have, it's very simple. So like I see that there is like 2 key results on the IPLD OKRs, which one is you, another one is Eric. And then there's another key result on the JS-IPFS OKRs, which is Alex, which also says that like he's going to work on landing Unix FSv2. And so, like I didn't have a clear way to kind of like page in on like the latest status. On like what was the progress so far, and it seemed like it wasn't clear also who to ask, because there's like multiple people that like were assigned as owning like learning this thing.
Yeah. I mean, some of it is like the implementations that come off of the spec, obviously. I'm not sure exactly what Eric's OKRs are for Unix FSv2. I don't have it in front of me, but yeah. Oh, and then there was one last point. Oh yeah, the last point is that we are currently sort of pointing to a HAMP implementation that is not drafted. And so this spec will be in front of that. And like we're basically pointing to an implementation of it that is used in Filecoin in Go. That's like the only reference that we have for that. So it will be like a spec that points to a non-existent spec. So that'll be a little bit problematic in the future, I think, especially for the JS side.
Got it. Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah, +1 to that HAMP thing. I think that creates a lot of fear for me whenever I'm looking at things in this area. We haven't figured out how to specify that, and I'm not entirely sure we've figured out how to leave the right shaped hole in the specification for it either. It's really scary.
So I seem to remember that Jeremy had a newer HAMP. I don't know what the state of that is though.
Yeah, there's a champed HAMP floating out there somewhere.
Yeah.
Steven, you had your hand up earlier to one of David's points, I guess. So you wanted to say something?
I can't remember what that was yet now.
Okay. It was perhaps like it was at the moment where we were talking about that Go IPFS sends the IPLD stuff over the wire and JSON stuff, I guess.
Yeah, Okay, so part of that is an API issue where ideally we'd just be sending the serialized block. And we actually have an API for sending the serialized block, but it's kind of semi-broken for other reasons. Part of it is also, again, the fact that we did try to come up with a solution to that, and it stalled because there was a period of time where we said, okay, fine, like JSON just won't support binary. And now we've gone back and decided that, well, actually, maybe JSON will support binary. So we have to actually just, basically someone needs to own it and change the spec and implement it. And it's not that difficult, but we just need to get people to agree on it.
Wait a second, I'm a little bit confused by that. So yes, we are going to have DEG.json support binary, but
now
but that doesn't mean that if you have a CBOR node, it will have a JSON representation in that format, right? If you're sending around a CBOR node, you still want to send around the binary blob.
But it means if we have a CBOR node that keeps it that constrains itself to one of our standard the IPLD data model, then it should be converted to JSON back, right? Isn't that?
So no, so we specifically dropped that. So there is no canonical representation anymore to change between formats. You have to do that yourself, and that was to satisfy Juan's requirements around precision loss on the JavaScript side with different integer types.
I see. Okay.
Yeah. So there is no canonical format anymore to be pushing around. So we definitely need to send the binary blob. And if we're sending DEG.json, that will happen to be valid JSON. But yeah,
okay.
We need to figure out just how to treat these as just big binary blobs.
Okay. Did we I think the solution there really is so we have this block API that sends around the raw blocks, but it doesn't do resolution, stuff like that, and it's kind of annoying. It would be kind of nice to just modify the current DAG API to send raw data. I wonder if we could add an encoding, because the way we currently do this encoding thing is we say, well, encode it using JSON, but what we really mean, it's kind of funky because the encoding is supposed to be the response encoding, but what we're actually doing is telling it to convert an IPLD object to something else, which is why it doesn't make that much sense in the first place. I guess we'll just have to sit down and probably I'll talk to the JS people, figure out the right command structure for that, because I think the current DAG commands are kind of broken. Yep.
Yeah. So typically, so this is with an HTTP API, right?
Yeah, this is pretty much IPFS stuff. But
yeah. So typically the solution here is to take any metadata and shove it into the headers, and then the body needs to just be the binary data.
Forget the fact that so we call it HTTP API. It's not HTTP. It's kind of a weird RPC API over HTTP, where we have very specific semantics. You can't put things in the headers.
Okay, but can you send binary blobs?
You can. The current API expects you to send it's actually a bit problematic because errors are indistinguishable from, they used to be indistinguishable from non-errors. Now it's slightly less bad, but we haven't for compatibility reasons, the old client still can still make or still confuse errors and non-errors. Whatever. Yeah. David, do you have a comment on this?
Yeah, I have a comment. I was trying to say in the comments, so this is one of the interface issues that I was trying to bring up earlier. It is a conversation that has been going for 2 years now, and so it basically stumbles upon this problem that Steven is describing when he says it's an HTTP API that's not really HTTP API, and Go just sees the HTTP socket as a TCP socket and serializes everything to JSON and just sends it through. And what that means is it just if there is a buffer or any special type, you just converts it to JSON and it just screws it up and doesn't give any other information. For DAG protobuf, we have been able to survive with that because we know the schema of a DAG protobuf. So we would always cast the data key to a buffer and it would work, right? But with CBOR, we don't have schemas anymore, so we cannot guess. And so there was a lot of backshedding, as you can see from this thread. It's long, but there's one comment that says read this, and this was as far as I've managed to get on the last bike shed war of IPLD HTTP API. And essentially it's kind of I think what Michael just said about just put information on the header or on the argument that says, hey, I want this object and please encode it into this format so that I know how to deserialize it so that I can then deserialize it locally, right? If you have a DEX keyboard node that has whatever inside, if you give me the raw thing, then I can deserialize it locally. It's kind of like last mile resolve, or that's like the term we use at the time. And then like that preserves the types. And like, yeah, like it's kind of like weird that like sometimes you will get the raw block, sometimes you will get the property directly. I think there's like some really like still some rough edges to polish, but it's something that like if implemented today will enable JS IPFS API, so the clients who got IPFS to use that API today, which they can.
Could we consider breaking DAG get simply because it's already so broken? Or would that not be a solution? Like if we could do that, then we could always wrap it in a JSON object and like have a base 64 encoded field with whatever size that has the data, and then another one that has like the CID prefix. So that would give us all the information we need, and it would be very consistent. The other way to do this is to use the block API. The problem with the block API, as far as I know, can't do resolution.
So yeah, like the dirty hack is using the block API and then doing the resolving locally, but that means like every time you jump from one node to another node, you're doing an HTTP request to a IPFS node. I didn't understand the first part. Sorry.
So the first part was like, could we just like break the DAG API and just like basically redefine it entirely?
Depends on like
what entirely new API.
Yeah, depends on like what it means to redefine it.
I mean, define it to return a JSON object that has a data field and like a CID prefix field, and the data field is just encoded. Like
so it's kind of like that's like another way to do what is on that proposal. So I recommend everyone just going through the thread. There's a lot of context there. Let's like just like check in, and like even if the decision is let's close the issue and start from scratch, that's fine. But like let's make sure to have like some continuation there. Volker.
We are almost out of time, or we are out of time. I just want to add is like currently we say if we talk about the HTTP API, we talk about the responses are JSON encoded. But the big question for me is like, does it always need to be JSON? Because like as basically Steven basically says is we could just basically send over CBOR, for example, to basically send over binary, let's say CBOR, and you could even do the resolving in CBOR. So you basically get a string back, but it's still CBOR encoded. Steven?
So actually, we can send back whatever we want. We have, can someone mute? I'm getting feedback. Thank you. Sorry, it's hard to concentrate. So you actually have an encoding parameter. So you can say like encode using protobuf, encode using CBOR, whatever. But the problem with now means like I need to know the encoding of the thing I'm expecting to actually tell it to like not like change it at all. So my idea was actually just use JSON because it does allow us to send back other data. The problem is if we just send back raw data, we can't send back additional metadata easily. We could put it in the headers, but the current HTTP spec, our current HTTP API spec doesn't allow for that. But if we send back an actual like JSON object with like some field that just had like the raw object encoded in it, then it would work. There may be other ways of doing this. I just don't know.
Yeah, that's basically like those are details, I would say. So that's totally fine as well. It makes sense to have basically wrapped in a JSON object, and then the contents is basically binary. All right. Is there anything else? Because we are already running out of time. 2 minutes over.
I have one last ask.
Yeah.
I'll make it quick. So David asked, why is stuff slow? And it seems to me we don't actually have a ton of people who are full-time on IPLD, and it would be really, really nice to get more. It's like, according to the capacity planner anyway, it's Michael, Volker, me, and that's it. And Michael is part-time, and despite that, doing an awesome job of like trying to push our specs through. But that's one of each of us for the 2 languages here. So we're not even like, we aren't, you and I, Volker, super equipped to be code reviewing each other. So if we both had one more human on each of the language sides, I feel like it would make us go way faster.
So I please do drag me into code reviews because I'm trying to get myself dragged back to IPLD land.
You're a series of blanks on the capacity planner. So
yeah. Well, that's why they're blank, because I'm trying to get myself dragged back, but at the moment I'm being dragged in other directions. I think a key thing here is better coordination. We've noticed the same thing on the GoFest team, where like if we're all like coordinating, talking a lot, like stuff just gets done and happens. But whatever's kind of off in their own worlds, it can be very hard to like make progress on things because you don't really know what's happening.
We should also schedule like a spec review meeting period to try to make it synchronous and a little more forced. Maybe, I don't know. I'd be on board.
Maybe also just like writing up specs and like writing things up is always good. And if people don't read it, like bug them insistently over IRC to actually like read it and look at it.
Well, we can also use this meeting to unblock spec issues, like if we're really stuck. And also on the code review side, I do review the JS stuff from Fulker. So
okay, well, this is a complaint of me then.
Yeah. Don't trust me to review any Go code. That would be bad.
I was Biggs joining us in the next quarter if he's willing to, and then I don't know if we're hiring or what for these.
So like the capacity planner is exactly for that, for planning. And so if you feel that like the team is understaffed, like definitely like add humans so that you can like say, oh, we need more people to tackle on these things. The other thing is like, remember, like this is like a very large community. Like we have like the way that IPLD came to existence and the CID and so on was people that were even like more overbooked. Like we had way less capacity and we had like an amazing community of contributors contributing to the discussion, doing the research, participating on these threads. And so that's like why I also encourage it, like, hey, like checking in with all of these people, checking in all of these threads from the past, because we might have now solved problems that were highlighted in the past that now would encourage people to like come back and continue the conversation. And so, yeah, like there's an issue on IPLD/IPLD that like just like points to the notes. I actually spent some time on the weekend just like labeling IPLD issues on IPFS/notes so that like it's easy to find. And then I'm also doing that for the IPFS/specs, which has a bunch of IPLD things, so that like it's like you can find it easily. And yeah, like I'm sure you'll find a lot of new ideas and meet new faces when you go through those.
All right. Yeah, I will. Okay. Any other things? All right. Then thanks for joining the meeting. We will talk again in 2 weeks. Yes. Thanks for your time and see you then. Goodbye.